Welcome to the Fitness Queens podcast, empowering your mind and sculpting your body. Join your hosts, multiple fitness world champions, Alicia Kyrios and Stephanie McHugh, as we explore all things female health, training, competing, mindset, and living the fitness life every day.
So everybody, welcome to the latest episode of We Fitness Queens with my beautiful co-host, Stephanie McHugh. And we are very excited, as we announced in our previous episode, to finally have this remarkable woman and very good friend of ours on the podcast with us today, the absolutely amazing Michelle McDonald, who is the owner, founder, and director of the Wonder Woman Official. She is an all-round legend and an absolute babe that inspires every woman I know over the age of probably 30 of what is in store for a great future in fitness if you live life the way she's been able to live it. So welcome, Michelle. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you for coming up, Michelle.
Wow, that is a great introduction. Thank you so much, Alicia. Appreciate that. And I appreciate that you said 30 and above.
Absolutely, because I'm not joking. I know, and we'll get into this. I know, because we always, banter about, client bases and just the people that we are influencing. And I know you love to say to people, the older gals, but I have heard from so many people over my walks, in the last decade in this industry, that are inspired by you from such a younger age than what you would even anticipate. And I do know that, a lot of the, very aware women in their 30s that are really aware of health and longevity over just, rock hard abs, they do look at you and they do go, well, I feel okay about where I'm going because I can look like that, right? So you do inspire women at a much younger age, I think, than what you would even anticipate. But and I think it's worth
myself included, guys. I mean, seriously,
Definitely.
This one from afar, I've just watched her excel. I mean, from not just an athlete perspective, but a coaching perspective.
Right.
I mean, she's so well-rounded. I mean, she's such a leader and inspiration to us all. So welcome onto the show, Michelle. Thank you so much for hopping on with us. She's also a world champion, guys. I mean, she's actually one of the great examples that I like to actually, showcase whenever people are like, oh man, I'm too old, to be able to get that title. I'm like, are you kidding me? Have you seen Michelle McDonald? She
or losing several times, right? So keep trying, you keep improving, and you keep trying. Thanks, guys.
I actually think that's a really great point you just made, because we've competed with Michelle now for a very long time, and I've had the joy of actually physically being on stage with her in my lineup for many years. And I don't think I had a happier moment on stage than when Michelle broke into the top 3. And I wish I had have been on stage when she, won the first one, because it was just so beautiful to see her come from, constantly coming back and refining.
Far away in the distance.
It was a beautiful process. Beautiful process. And to see the physique evolve, like, wow. and Steph is right. The amount of times I have ladies that come to me and go, I've always wanted to do this. It's been on my bucket list. I don't think I can do it anymore. I've had kids. I've got stretch marks. I'm over 38. I'm 40 something. Like, there's always some limiting factor that women place on themselves, especially as they age. Yeah. And they do, they get trapped in that, ceiling of, well, this isn't possible for me. And the first thing I always do say to Steph is, excuse me, have you seen Michelle? And then I just bust out Michelle's Instagram page. And
you're promoting her left and right.
Exactly.
Like, the transformation that she's been able to do, not just physically. I'm telling you, for me, it's like watching how much she's really grown. Like, not again just muscle, but just, gosh, man, have you guys seen her mother? I mean, I'm sure she's gone viral so many times. Like, she's been able to actually showcase how older women have the stereotypical idea that age is going to label how good of progress they can get, or how hard work they have to maybe do more than others. No, I like, again, I'm going to leave the floor to Michelle, because I want her to give a little bit of some background, just, how you got here, and of course, what you do. This way, I leave it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Michelle, tell us why, and I guess, and what inspired you to keep going as someone that entered this sport that we all love, you know, a little later than most do, but you were just persistent and resilient with such tenacity. And I love that about you. But obviously that's underpinned by a big, deep passion, right? Like you wouldn't be all those things if you weren't so passionate about not only the sport, but fitness and health in general. What drew you to that? And maybe share a little bit of background on your journey for everyone listening, because they don't know the ins and outs like we do.
Right.
Yeah, sure. Easy. So I've, you know, I was in yoga for a long time in my 30s, and I was crazy about it. I did it 2, 3 times a day. I competed in it, which a lot of people find that very surprising. How can you compete in yoga? But actually you can. And so I was, you know, I was going to a lot of advanced seminars, and I was looking around me. I was in my late 30s at this point in time, and I thought, gosh, you know, all of this effort, and I'm incredibly healthy. My joints are amazing. So I had significant health, positive health outcomes from yoga. But yet I thought, gosh, I'm entering my fourth decade. I'm entering my 40s, and I feel something's missing, because I was looking around me at, you know, at these advanced seminars, and I was seeing gals that were older than me, and who had been doing this much longer than me. And I wasn't getting that inspiration that I was looking for, right? And I was invited to go watch a friend of mine compete at her first show. It was an NPC show. And she had gone through an amazing transformation. I think she was young, right? In her late 20s, and had lost 25 pounds. And I went to the show, and, you know, I'm looking at all these girls, and I saw a very specific look. They all had these round muscles. They were bikini girls. They looked beautiful. They were happy. They had energy. They were smiling. They were vibrant. They had abs. And I thought, well, they're all doing like something systematic, just like yogis were, you know, were crazy flexible. They're all doing something, and I like what it is that they're doing. I want to try this. And so that's how it started. I was already very much into nutrition, not the bodybuilding style of nutrition that we know, really prioritizing protein and all that jazz. But I was already a chef, and I had that yoga background. I knew about breathing. I knew about mindset. I knew about a lot of the stuff that's maybe missing in the bodybuilding world, or at least, you know, back when I started. But then when I layered on the training, it was like the trifecta. It really was a game changer. And oddly enough, the yoga that I do, which is Bikram yoga, not the originator, but the I guess the guru of the fellow who created Bikram, he actually was an IFBB judge. He coached people. He was a professor. So I found that fascinating as well. That lineage of yoga that I loved came from, you know, the family tree was this Indian fellow who was an IFBB judge, and he actually mentored one of the first Indians, Manatosh Roy, who won a Mr. Universe.
Wow.
Crazy, eh?
Wow.
Yeah, I love the story.
Yeah,
It's like it's soaking all this in. Didn't know. And actually, just to
started.
kind of piggyback off Michelle, just because I remember your yoga days. I still do. I was wondering, I found
They're coming back.
Yeah, like I've mentioned this to her multiple times.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I don't think you knew this, but I followed you when you were like extremely flexible, doing all these back bends.
Me
like,
too.
all the time. I'm like, this woman is just so flexible. So, I mean, I really find that so interesting that of course, you were so deep into yoga at the time. I remember like you did a daily practice. You would like post daily about yoga. And I was still like an amateur in the WPFF at the time. And that was actually something that when I first started competing, I really looked for inspirations, which I've mentioned multiple times here on the podcast. Andrea Brazier was what kind of drew me to the brand in the first place. And it was women like, you know, again, with different backgrounds, like Michelle and like Alicia, just these unique, different muscle bellies and different looks and different body types that I found. I'm like, yeah, this is something I can, you know, realistically do for longer periods of time rather than just like fitting within a box. So I do find that what she just mentioned there, the evolution, right? Like her passion in her fitness industry has changed from a yoga standpoint, you know, to also a bodybuilding now. And I'm sure she mixes in some of all of her, you know, programming with some good flexibility stuff.
I love that you're going to bring it back because I always loved it too. I used to really enjoy watching not only the video stuff that you would post, but those static poses in these absolutely incredible, positions. And I would be looking at you going, this woman is a literal pretzel. Like, this is impressive. And I do agree. I think that having that blend, because yoga looks at so many other aspects, is this beautiful yin and yang, right? And we yang inside of the weights room all the time with the resistance-based work that we're doing. And I think it's beautiful to incorporate that real yin process on the other side. So I'd love to see you bring it back. I think for all of the audience that has known you for the last probably half decade, they probably missed out on witnessing a lot of that because it was a little bit earlier. And I think they'd really benefit from seeing that. I'm so glad you're bringing it back. But tell us, because you've obviously come through, you hit this point where you've decided, I want what she's having, I'm going to get on that stage too. You got the bug, you fell in love with it clearly, because look at the evolution you've had since. You would have gone through some major life cycle changes throughout that time. And I know now you're someone that posts some really great posts around, change of life for ladies, walking into and stepping into, that next chapter in menopause. And also just recognizing the changes that happen as we walk through these, next decade chapters, as you call it. What are some of the common misconceptions that you see that people put out there versus what and you've lived?
Right. Well, I'm so glad you asked that question. So, the common narrative, and we're seeing it really exacerbated now with the conversations around hormone therapy. So the common narrative is that menopause is like a diseased or a deficiency state. You'll hear that a lot. That sarcopenia, osteopenia, dementia, cardiovascular disease, belly fat, these things are an inevitable part of menopause. And of course, we know that that's not true. But that's the narrative. And that narrative is inside of women. So they believe that. It's also in social media, it's in medicine. And I'm sure you also have clients that come to you that have been to the doctors, they've done the rounds, and they've been told that they have to accept their current health reality because they're postmenopausal, and that's what happens. So that, I think, is what the real issue is. And what I've done with my own life, and now my life's work really is coaching women and coaching women to coach other women, so we can reach more people at once, because numbers are essential. Is that you can have a profound influence on how you experience the aging process, including the menopause, through lifestyle factors. And it's, and the research is there. The research backs it up, right? The research on how resistance training reduces your risk in very large numbers, not reduces your risk by 5%, but we're talking 30%, 45%, right, of dementia. A positive body composition drastically reduces your risk factor for like the top three, your cancers, diabetes, and CVD, and these are the biggest killers. These are the top three. So we really need to change that narrative. So that's what it really excites me. I definitely am seeing some interesting pivots right now. We've got some wonderful people that have quite a bit of clout, that are getting that message out there, that are doctors, and they're really being able to leverage themselves and what they have to say. People like Dr. Gabriel Lyon, of course.
Love her.
Dr. Stacy Sims. Two great examples out there, really kind of lambasting, hey, it doesn't have to be like this. So it's great. It's a very exciting time for women's health. And to your point, for young gals, when I was young, I absolutely did not have any positive role models for aging well as a woman. If you would ask me at 20, what would this be what 50 was like? Or even you, Alicia, at 40, I would be like, no way, that's not true.
That's not real. That's not real. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And so, we need to be out there saying this is an alternative. And for some things like osteoporosis, you want to be starting those great lifestyle decisions when you're young, and that, right?
Yes.
So bone health starts when you're young, etc. Even Alzheimer's, you want to start making smart lifestyle choices when you're younger. So it's an exciting time.
That's amazing.
I love everything you touch, Michelle, just because it's so true. I feel like women to have this like narrative so stuck in their brain because of what they've been told. And of course, not having the examples and role models in front of us to maybe lead the path and lead the way. But there's like, for example, for me, I'd never had, let's say, someone fit at 50 years old, in my community, like just in my, let's say, heritage and my, tradition. It's just really not common. It's not common. It's just more of a, oh, you've aged, your back is out, you don't do anything about it. You're just gonna, have backaches and hormonal problems and all these things. So I love that you have mentioned, of course, that's like the biggest misconception. I think for me, it's like understanding, of course, as you age, what are some of those maybe overall issues that maybe some of the women do experience with menopause? I think that like, what's the effect? I guess, what is the overall symptoms that you would say a female undergoes when going through menopause?
Do you mean what I see as a coach with gals that I'm working with?
Yes.
And then I think also too, what would be cool, Michelle, is to even, if you don't mind sharing a little bit of your own experience and how it looked and sort of even when it happened for you, because I don't know about you, but something I'm seeing more and more, and I know Dr. Gabrielle Lyons actually has touched on this in a few places, is it's happening earlier, like way, way earlier for a lot of women than what it would have happened in my mother's era even. And, it's a bit daunting for some, and they don't see it coming, and it can take them out sideways when they least expect it. And I think, maybe touching on that from a coach's perspective, but then also from your own personal, would be super interesting for the listeners.
Yeah. So, well, my experience, my N=1 is, and I often wonder, why was my experience the way it was? So I am menopausal, so like early menopause. So I've been through that transition, but my transition was very, very, I can't say ordinary, because it wasn't ordinary. It was not ordinary. I didn't even realize I was going through it. I had a little bit of irregularity with my cycle. I had 2 cold flashes, so I had to look that up. I'm like, what's going on? And actually, someone experienced a cold flash. And I was laughing with my husband, JJ, the other day. I said, everything about my experience is kind of like backwards. Yeah, I really didn't suffer from any hot flashes or anything. I did experience some skin prickling in my mid-30s around I always noticed it when I would start a prep. When I would start a prep, I would get these my triceps would be very itchy, which was interesting. And I've only just now read some literature that said you can get these like your vasomotor symptoms could be experienced as like almost like a beta-alanine, like a tingling.
Wow.
Yeah. Like
so I did. Yeah. So I did have that, but it's been very, very ordinary. Luckily, thank goodness. My mom had a hysterectomy, so I can't even, ask her what her symptoms were like, and she doesn't know what my grandmother's passed now. And that can be very interesting. Victoria Falkar talks about that, try to find out about your family history. That can give you a little bit of an idea of what you might be looking at with your experience of the menopause transition. But of course, again, lifestyle is such a huge factor. Now, I know I have clients that are doing everything right, as we would call it, you know, eating well, getting their protein and training hard, that still experience, you know, significant symptoms, hot flashes, and then particularly sleep disturbances. And a lot of times that those go hand in hand. So it's not, I'm certainly not going to say, and certainly not in any kind of a judgmental way. You've got to be careful of this, right? If you're suffering from symptoms, you're doing things wrong. That's not what we want to say, right? I mean, sometimes, yes, fix your lifestyle, absolutely. But for some people, it's not that at all. So we want to be careful with that. But my experience was that doing everything right, you know, it worked very, very well for me. And I'm so grateful that I started doing bodybuilding. I did bodybuilding. I started it because I wanted to look like that. I wanted to have those abs. And I wanted to have a structure. I didn't want to guess at it and, you know, like guess at my diet. I wanted to know, what's the system that if I follow the system, the process, I'm going to get this guaranteed outcome, right? And bodybuilding provided me with that. But then when I think of now, you know, and I'm not saying this in a vain way, but if I'm checking out my physique or doing progress pictures, I'm thinking, this is crazy. I'm 53 in a couple of weeks, and my glutes are better now than they were when I was 40 or 30. And that's kind of crazy. And I'm so grateful to myself.
I'm like, do you guys hear this? She's about to turn 53. I just want the listeners to hear that if you didn't
And I think that this is really cool because she's also obliterating those conversations and narratives that we often hear women say, which is it's all downhill after menopause. I can't possibly get anything like, and the other fallacy is I can't possibly grow any more muscle. Well, actually,
that's the number one I hear, Allie. Like that's actually the one I hear the most common. Besides the competing, like there's no way I can compete. It's like, oh, there's no chance. I'm not going to build, you know, muscle. I'm 50. It's like, well, that's actually wrong because if you follow the systems, if you guys hear, Michelle followed a process. She got addicted to actually having things to follow through with, learning, you know, experiencing it, and actually having, you know, those systems in place to see the results. It's like, who wants to be doing all the hard work and not see those results? It's like, sometimes that's the person, maybe you as a listener are listening to this and saying like, man, I'm doing so much. I'm eating right. I'm training hard, but you don't see the results. There's something that usually is missing. There maybe aren't, you know, going together. Maybe your training and your eating methods aren't really going accordingly to help facilitate more muscle growth. It could be that you're dieting too much. Maybe you're in a deficit or you're chronically dieting. All these things that she's really bringing up. I just want everyone to really be tuning into how well she's at process driven. Like she's so process driven, which is what makes her successful. And she's actually following through with all these processes. It's not just like, let me start one thing and then hop off and then start something else and then hop off. She's really going through years on end. And just question, Michelle, because I think for the listeners here, because we were talking about yoga, just time frame. How long have you been bodybuilding or since you saw your friend compete 39. On that NPC show?
39.
39.
Since
so she's
39.
Wow, amazing. So 14, going on 14 years, right? Woo-hoo. Amazing.
And so just for everyone listening too, that's a sign that, hey, Michelle didn't look like she did overnight. It wasn't an overnight success. This is a lady that has invested everything into, you know, running the process and finessing it, then running it and analyzing it and finessing it and running it again and finessing it again. She hasn't dropped the ball. She hasn't had off seasons away from it. It's become the fabric of her life. And this is a really, I think, important take home is that this isn't something that Michelle's gone is just going to be a sport for me. This is something where she's gone, hey, I love this. I love everything about this journey. I'm throwing my whole self into it. And she's done that for the last 14 years. So if you want glutes like hers, which you can get, we're showing you can, it's not just going to happen overnight and you can't just expect to get it in 6 months. You've actually got to apply yourself to this much bigger picture of what does health look like and where am I consistently applying myself? Because it's not that Michelle does anything magic, you know, that no one knows that she has in a pill form. She's literally just consistent as heck and constantly reviewing her process. So, you know, I think there's magic in getting awareness around that, because she looks ridiculously good, people.
I
If you've
just
ever
trained
seen her
with
in a
her.
bikini, it's ridiculously.
And I
That's
was
right.
like,
We trained
"Michelle,
together.
yes, we actually were able to do a training session in Australia. We were, it's so funny because we see each other multiple times in the year, but never across the globe. It's always just kind of been within each other's countries. And it's really cool because I saw Michelle's glutes in person. I'm like, wait, this is the best glutes I've seen on you, Michelle. Like I've seen you multiple times in person. I've seen you in training sessions, and this is by far the best muscle mass I've seen on your lower body, which I know you've been working so hard for. So sometimes, it takes that picking up the habits, going through the systems. Like Ali said, you have to go through it a few times. She's done multiple competitions. We haven't even brought up how many times she's been on a stage and has gone through the process of building more muscle mass, and then dieting down and actually going through a deficit to, peel back some of those layers. So I do think that, just hearing the background of where she comes from, it's very important to kind of dial into the timeline as well as to her habits and everything that she's mentioning here. My biggest thing is takeaway is the fact that she's been focusing on building muscle over all this time. So no matter what, like, it's not just the stage. I mean, maybe that was a goal or deadline that she might have had in front of her, but it was really the fact that she wanted to build up her physique and be strong and have some good, aesthetic, different, shapes. She said she wanted abs, she wants glutes, and all these things that she's had to work really hard, with adding more layers to her frame. So my question to you, Michelle, is, obviously, what are some of the key changes women should expect in their bodies during menopause, and how they didn't adapt their fitness routines accordingly? Because this is, of course, going back to building muscle, right? Like, some girls are just doing more cardio, or just like, doing high intensity interval training, on end, because this is what they know. So I kind of bring in a layout as far as building muscle and how you've seen, I guess, those challenges and differences when you hit menopause.
That's a tough one. It's a tough one because the experience of the menopause transition is going to be incredibly individual. And depending on where your current, health state is, and what your habits are, and then the other, sort of hereditary factors, it's so individual. So I just want to say that first of all, but I can definitely talk about some of the common mistakes, I guess, for lack of a better word, that you can avoid, right? So for sure, your focus when you're entering your perimenopausal years should be on developing a great resistance training routine. And as we know, that means focusing on getting stronger. There really needs to be a focus on that, as opposed to just hypertrophy. So if you're somebody who's used to going to the gym and sculpting, and you've been able to kind of work with that with some cardio and dinners and alcohol on the weekends and that sort of thing, you might find that doesn't serve you, and you actually are going to have to focus on the kind of intense lifting that drives that adaptive response in the body. So heavy lifting. So that's one thing that I think served me really well. I did get into powerlifting, and I know sometimes that can be controversial with bodybuilding, fears of strengthening the erectors and all that jazz. But there is that shift that needs to be made to actually getting strong. So that's one. The other is cardio. And this is different from training for a show, right? Training for a show, I've always had to do some cardio. So that's part of the caloric deficit that I ran. I'd rather eat a little bit more and do some cardio. But when we're talking about general health and approaches to menopause, and I had a fabulous talk just the other day with Dr. Stacey Sims, who loves HIIT training, right? So true HIIT training, where you're really going all out for a short period of time, the period of time that actually would constitute a sprint, right? So 10, 20, maybe 30 seconds tops, and then doing active recovery and doing cycles of that as a better driver for adaptation than doing cardiovascular training, being in zone 2 training. When it comes to actually seeing an adaptive response in the body. So, and a lot of people they don't enjoy doing true HIIT training, but yeah, I find a way to find a way to push yourself, find a way to hook yourself that you can really get yourself to do it. And we're not talking about 40 minutes of HIIT training. We're talking about like to get the health benefits, the stimulation in the body, in the nervous system, and in the tissues. We're talking about like 10 intervals, right? So 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the recovery period. It can be a salt bike, it can be running, it could be on the rower, but really hitting that. I go by heart rate, so I want to see my heart rate get up to 90-95% of my VO2 max, and I go higher because I consider myself to be younger, biologically versus my chronological age. So that's another thing to consider. Again, if you're used to, I'm used to jogging and whatnot. Well, you're probably going to have to start doing some like Metcon type of workouts, like battle ropes, or else like the true assault bike kind of spinning. We're not talking about these like 45-minute classes, because you can't sprint for 45 minutes, right? We're talking about the kind of stuff that you could only do. So if you guys were track athletes, remember that, right? Like the sprint work would be very short. We're all out.
Yeah.
Protein, right? So making sure you're getting enough protein in, and as you get older, our ability to metabolize protein goes down, so we get less efficient with it. We excrete it more. So making sure that you're topping up with protein, especially in that post-workout window, becomes more important. So you might, when you were younger, you might have been able to like, okay, I forgot to eat my post-workout meal, and I'm going to go out for a beef steak at night. But when you get older, these eating windows become more important, especially for women who are already a little bit disadvantaged with their ability to create muscle tissue. So that's another shift, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, keep going. I'm talking about meal timing here because we've touched so much on that on our previous episodes. So I know previous listeners and stuff, are probably like, oh man, they've touched that, not just for menopause. I mean, literally just the fact that it's so important.
A lot of stuff, what happens for the peri and the transition, I'm like, well, it's true for all ages, but I call it your play space, your ability to fool around in the perimenopause transition and in menopause, it narrows.
Yeah.
Right. And the higher your goal, the higher outcome, the higher level of outcome you aspire to, the more narrow.
Yeah, makes sense.
So you just got to understand that it's like risk reward, or like pleasure, pain. How fun is this thing that I want to do? And like just fooling around with your food. And is that going to give me the outcome that I want? So just making different choices and understanding the outcomes for that. Sleep is a huge one. You cannot miss sleep like you can when you were young. When you were young, you could do all kinds of things and still like put on muscle, but you will have to change your habits. So sleep is huge. Managing your stress. So we always have to manage our stress, but when we're older, even more so. So just having clear boundaries, that's another huge one that you really can't fool around with. And having tools, right? So I have a lot of stressful things in my life, for example, but I have a lot of tools. Again, I'm so grateful for the decade that I went deep with yoga. So just posture, diaphragmatic control, breath work. I'm always in touch with my breathing, and I can tap into it really easily. So that's so easy to learn how to do. Wind down routines, if you need to do a wind down routine, key. So there's a lot of things that you can do that allow you to have a very, high stress life, but not get stressed out. And to recognize if you're getting to your limit, just check out, I'm going to have to cancel on this. I'm so sorry. Can we do it next week? So easy to do. And I think when you're older, hopefully it'll be easier for you to have those conversations, not be so in your head. So and then recovery is the other thing I think I should really mention, is you really have to, and that's something that I personally experienced a lot with this last prep. I noticed my recovery really changed. And I was the kind of gal that could do 90 minutes, no problem, balls to the wall, a lot of heavy lifting, and a lot of volume after a heavy lifting session. So I could do 4 sets of, 6 on the deadlift, and then and really be at that high intensity. And then I would go and do split squats and step ups, and I would do so much other stuff, leg press. And now I'm like 4 exercises, maybe 5, and I'm done. Now I'm not saying that for everyone that's in the menopause transition, that's going to be true for you. But for people that train at a high level, that really push, that have that neural drive, you guys know what I mean, right? And you're used to just, having endless amounts of energy, you might have to adjust, right? Because it's going to take longer for your body to recover from those intense sessions. So just be aware of that. And once you adjust, don't worry about muscle loss, because we know that we grow muscle during the recovery phase. So just focus on that intensity. Yeah, and they get the food in and get the rest in.
Yep, I love that. And one thing that I do want to raise this, because I think this is a really important and unique factor for you too. But it's definitely something that I have conversations with clients on when they're going through some of the more, problematic symptoms in this phase of life. And they're still drinking, Michelle, and they're still doing these, quite prolific social events with friends where they feel like they can't say no to things, and they can't put up boundaries, but it does impact upon the symptoms that they face and their ability to actually have, I think, better recovery and better sleep, and to down regulate the CNS that might be, overtoned at the time. There's a lot of it. And I don't know if it's just a broad, blanket to say that when you step into that space and you have less things to do, perhaps for a lot of these people that are stepping into semi-retirement, the drinking becomes more prevalent. I don't know. I don't know if it's just that it's then time with friends they didn't have, or if it's, I don't know, maybe even idle hands. But I feel like, and I'm constantly having conversations where I'm like, can we curb the amount of drinking? And I think for everyone that doesn't know, Michelle doesn't drink at all, like not at all, and hasn't done for a very long time, like well over a decade. So I'm going to draw a big correlation here to say that it's definitely, I believe, had a positive impact upon how she's experienced things and how she's built her muscle, because she hasn't lost time and benefit and recovery and adaptation because of alcohol consumption. I'm not saying all alcohol is bad, but I'm just saying I think women,
toxic, guys.
I think women do need to appreciate that it is part of the lifestyle factors that may need to change. And it might not be eliminating it completely. You don't have to be like Michelle, but it would be aware of frequency and dosage, definitely. I mean, Michelle, what's your take on it? Is that a conversation you have to have too with a lot of ladies that are sort of, 40s and above? Because I find it's definitely a common theme in a lot of the ones I have to have.
I don't have it a lot, but when I do have it, I'm really honest. It is a hepatotoxin, right? So it is damaging to the liver, and I call it, aging in a glass. So it does accelerate the aging process, especially, the things that we're vain about, our skin, especially around the eyes, in the face. It does really age you. I mean, you can tell somebody who's been drinking regularly, especially when they hit their 40s, and somebody who rarely drinks. The great thing is that you can recover a lot just from stopping. Or just really tightly regulating, like treat it. I would say, I certainly don't think people have to not drink. I don't drink because JJ, as you know, is 23 years NA. And I actually don't process alcohol very well. So I, even from like an ounce, I'll get very red and glassy eyed, and my veins will be bulging. It just doesn't process in my body. So it stays as alcohol for a very long time. My body doesn't process it and break it down. And I feel lucky, because it was very obvious to me what it was. Like it's if your body can't break it down, you see the toxic effects to your body. And I would literally going out for dinner, and there was this beautiful elevator that I would go downstairs, and elevator had this wonderful mirror, and I would feel fantastic going out to dinner with my Russian friends. This was back in my 30s. But when I would come home at 1 o'clock in the morning, after I'd had a couple of glasses of champagne or whatever, I would be like, who is this person? It was like I had aged 10 years. So So the conversation I would have, number one, would just be around, what are your goals? So I work a lot with lifestyle transformations, and definitely that coupled with being in midlife is going to negatively affect your visceral fat, right? So the fat around your midsection, it definitely will slow down process as you get older. It takes longer to recover, and so on and so forth. And what's interesting is that once gals that did drink stop drinking, and then we rotate in like a social meal where it's like, okay, what do you want to have? Oh, I really want to have a glass of wine with my girlfriends. All right, let's have a glass of wine. What else do you want to have? So we have that kind of coaching discussion, walking them through their first like kind of treat meal. And guess what we hear the next day, right? Oh my God,
Terrible.
I hate it.
Feel
Yeah, I
terrible.
feel terrible. I feel like I've been poisoned. And because and I think you get so used to what health feels like for the first time, what drinking water and getting your sleep in and training and getting sufficient protein, what it feels like, that when you put that into your body, or when you have like, some junk food, or you just have a really stressful day that you don't manage things properly and you miss a meal, like you've realized, oh my God, I to do that all the time and I feel terrible. And my friends are doing that all the time, and then they want to get their friends onto this whole bodybuilding thing, right? So that would be the conversation I would have, and I'm sure you guys are the same.
Yeah, look, it's definitely something that comes up, and I can honestly say that in dealing with an Australian culture, perhaps too, it's probably a little bit more so because drinking is quite a big scene here too. And as someone who I didn't drink at all till I was 25, and I really only drank around, corporate functions and the wining and dining and schmoozing you have to do. And then the minute I got into the sport, I didn't. And I was completely sober for, it was well over 4 years until I met Christos, and then would enjoy just the odd glasses of wine over a nice meal, but definitely never frequent drinking, never a lot, never more than a couple of glasses. I think, the most I've probably drunk has probably been in a restaurant meal with Steph and Kerry at some point. We've maybe had 3 glasses.
Thanks, Allie.
It's not a lot. It's really not a lot, but we sit there for hours, So I'm like, I come from a culture that is really deep seated in, the socializing, the wining and dining, but I've never really sat as part of that myself. So my conversations with people is,
That's why your skin is so fantastic.
Do you know what? I always get comments.
Awesome.
I never wear makeup. It's only when I have a red carpet event or we're going to a show. And I always get asked about it. And look, I do use really good skincare. I have, some facial treatments, some vampire facials done twice a year, but it's only twice a year. I don't do anything really crazy. And I don't jab myself with a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm pretty blessed. I think genetically I'm probably lucky, but I've just lived a very good lifestyle. And I think you are so right, Michelle. I've never really abused myself. And I think that has a big part to play in it. And I do want to touch on the recovery side of things, because the one thing now I have obviously not had any alcohol in a very, very long time, going through IVF and then going through pregnancies and now multiple pregnancies. And I think I had 1 glass with Steph in between these 2 babies at some point. And what you just talked about is exactly how I felt that next morning. It was 1 glass of wine. We did
dehydration.
Yep. Yeah. I just woke up the next day. I turned to Christos and went, holy crap. Like, I actually feel like we've just done a 3-day bender at a festival, and I've had no sleep, and I've done so much alcohol that's not funny. And I've had literal 1 glass.
1 glass. Yeah, I remember. You even messaged me.
I said it to Steph.
Yeah, she told me even like, hey, I feel like hell, from that 1 glass last night. And it's like with our dinner. And I agree with Allie, like as far as the recovery side, and Michelle here when she's bringing up, just the lack of building muscle, or the fact that you can't really build as optimally. I think that one of the bigger things is that it's being toxic and staying in your blood. So if you're doing it on end, let's say daily or every, other day, that's staying in your system. I mean, it really takes anywhere from 24 to 48 hours to even get that out of your system. So those that are drinking maybe daily, or not limiting themselves, or actually really shooting themselves in the foot, because if you're doing all the work, eating, awesome food, really wholesome and nutrient dense, and you're actually training with good efforts in the gym, and you are drinking daily, you're most likely slowing down your recovery process, which is also slowing down your muscle building, which again, I for me, look, guys, no one here on the podcast is unaware that I like to drink some wine here and there and have, of course, a few glasses. And it's very more for social settings. I think that this is where people really, their environment, they feel pressure, they feel like they have to drink wherever they're going or where they're participating in, and that is not the case. Like, if you're maybe a social drinker and it's starting to limit you, you have to check yourself. I think no matter who you are, you've got to really analyze and see, I'm actually doing this too frequently. I'm not building enough. I'm not leaning out. Whatever your process or your goal is, you have to actually maybe cleanse yourself and detox. I think that I go through this multiple times in the year, which is why I'll go periods without drinking at all. Like not even the once a week or anything, which is when I try to limit myself. It's like, you know what, I'll just do it once, with dinner, for a dinner date, on a Friday or a Saturday or whenever we have an occasion come, or when I'm on vacation or something like that. But when it is prep time, it's like, why would I stop my recovery process? Why would I stop myself from building sufficient muscle tissue and promoting that? So there's a time and a place. And if you're maybe suffering because it's hard for you to stop, then you might be having some more deeper, more internal, some actual things you have to work through. You probably have some triggers and stuff that's just kind of coping and putting a band-aid on it. So we've talked about trauma on these, episodes, and how much we actually have to maybe stop using something as a coping mechanism. So I think that alcohol is such a, we're not on the topic of alcohol, but I do agree here with Michelle as far as, it's going to really throw a wrench into your, let's say, fitness journey, if we're, just being a little more broad here. So,
and I think you nailed it too, Steph. And when Michelle asked about how we would communicate it, this is probably the conversation I have with people, it's, hey, look, I recognize it's going to be very hard for a lot of people to take it completely off the table. Let's just scale it right back. Let's instead go from having 3 drinks a night or a glass of wine every night when you cook dinner to glass of wine with dinner with husband on a Friday and a Saturday night only. You keep it to the weekend. Or it then becomes a case where it might only be a date night, specifically when you go out for a restaurant meal, or it might be that you are literally only having certain events or certain social celebrations that it's limited to. And then in time, what you will find is, like I felt that one time with 1 glass of wine, they'll turn around and they'll go, wow, okay, no way, didn't enjoy that at all.
Don't need that.
Find that what they initially even negotiated with themselves and with you as a coach to undertake reduces further again, or they completely stop it for big periods of time. But I just wanted to say that because I want to throw that out there, because we know it is a free radical. We know that it does break down, like so much goodness inside of your body. You don't want to be smashing yourself day in and out. But the one thing that I wanted to touch on that for, because for any woman that's listening to this that goes, oh gosh, that's actually me, quite often they'll say, it's the belly fat I can't lose in menopause. But then you break it back and they're actually drinking frequently. And I'm talking for a lot of these ladies that I'll stumble across, it's daily, and it's not just 1 glass. It might be 2 to 3 glasses some days. And then, it adds up. It's an accumulation across the course of the week, and all of these things will impact you. So I think that's a valid, conversation to have with people. But I also think it's really important to highlight that Michelle leads this beautiful lifestyle, people, where she just doesn't put any toxins into herself at all.
So one of the questions, Michelle, just because we're on this, you really do age like fine wine. I can get over that. Is there, any tips or any self-care that you would give women, at your age that you do? It could be we went through physical stuff, but maybe any other things that you do to take care even of your skin or yourself, just self-care things that you do.
I live in the jungle, so I gotta tell you, I really do think, and I think I don't think I have a bad skin like regimen. I don't have a bad one. I use my SPF. I have a really expensive SPF 50 facial that I use. But other than that, I'm always playing around with whatever I have. I always use a night cream or a night oil, and I'll use something on the day in the daytime. I don't use an eye cream. I haven't done a vampire facial. So it's really, I feel honestly like a combination of just not having a bad skin regimen, but having a lot of joy in my life. So even if I'm insanely busy and having those 13, 14-hour days, I'm still very much in touch with my why, like why I'm doing it. I'm very joyful. It's very easy for me to flip from, focusing on working and getting stuff done and putting out fires to playing with the dogs and joking around with my mother or my husband. And I think that comes from yoga and just so much coaching other women and a lot of mindset work, right? So I do feel like that energy that you have inside is going to affect how you age, because when you get older, you're just unconsciously practicing experiencing these emotions and having these faces, right? For longer. So it leaves a longer effect. It does, right? So that's one thing that I do think. I'll be going on my bicycle, going to the beach, and I'll pass so many people that come to visit Tulum, tourists, and they just look terribly unhappy.
Yeah. Like they're
That's
escaping
so
their life,
true.
right? They're taking a vacation to get away from something, whereas you're
And they're
in
so
every minute of every life of every day in your life, right? It's different.
And
I
yeah, and I know
absolutely love what you said. I mean, guys, the internal joy that she carries is what's carrying her to live a longer, healthier, life. And I think that what she oozes and that flow and that, motivation, inspiration that she does carry for so many of us, I think it has everything to do with what you just said there, the joy and being able to really hone into that why as to why you're doing this. I love that, Michelle.
And I love the fact that you spend so much time with family, and I'm so happy you brought Joan up, because she is just a monumental inspiration. And I know she
Brilliant.
just featured the cover of Women's Health,
health.
which is
Yes.
a massive
Epic.
achievement. Great
Great.
work to you.
77.
And
Congratulations.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you about some success stories, but let's just focus in on Mum, because I just love
Yeah.
Joan and I love
Just
everything about what you
finish it
guys
off with her. Yeah.
but this is going to show all of our listeners, and this is, the amazing skill set that she brings when she's coaching coaches to coach people, right? But one of her most profound transformations by far will be working with her own mother, Joan, and anyone that has not had the joy of experiencing Joan in any format, just follow her on social media, because at Train with Joan is such an incredible woman. But she has this amazing relationship with her daughter, and they have built this beautiful bond, but also this phenomenal transformation. And I'm just going to give Michelle the floor to discuss this as one of her key success stories, because I think it really is like it's a legacy one for Michelle. And I think what I'm excited for, and I'll throw this out there, but Michelle, you're going to be that same level of inspiration for every woman when you're in your 70s. I have no doubt, because I know what you are like now. And I know that in 20 years' time, you're going to be ridiculous.
I can't even think of what Michelle's going to be.
17 years.
Wow. It's crazy.
Almost the
right?
amount of time I've been with JJ. I'm like, that's crazy. Just time, right? I'm so glad to chat about Mom, and she's one of many. And I try to say this all the time because I want people to understand that I think Mom is my oldest client that has gone through this kind of transformation, but she's one of many. And so please, everyone, believe and understand that you can have a major health reversal, major health reversal. And when I say health, I don't just mean physical health, right? I also mean mental health, right? And spiritual health. You can have a major reversal no matter how many decades you've been going in the wrong direction. It's never too late. It's like following a Google, map quest, and you realize, wait a minute, this is not the right direction, right? So stop. Right? Like turn the map quest off and start reading the signs on the road and go back in the right direction. So mom, I think what's wonderful about Mom, in my opinion, as a coach, is here you've got somebody who was very obese for at least 40 decades, who had a hysterectomy, one ovary was left, no hormone therapy at all, and had hypertension, which she was medicated for, knee surgery that had incapacitated her for a while, and she never was really a beautiful outcome from that. So all of these things, right, that we would think, oh gosh, that's going to be a problem. How am I going to help this person? Or you're 70, your boat has sailed, you're too far gone, right? Hormones, and when you think of people that are 40 worried about their hormones, right? And I'm like, well, gosh, like look at Joan, like
Exactly.
she's not on, I mean, people think, oh, she must be on like MHT, or I'm like, you would not put somebody 60 above who has not been on MHT. You don't put them on hormone therapy, right? That would be malpractice, right? You want to give them cancer or like a thrombotic event. I sometimes wonder at what people post on social media. I've heard this from
Wow.
coaches. Oh, she has to be on MHT, and it's like, that would be malpractice. You should not be putting somebody 60 plus who has never been on hormone therapy on hormone therapy. So it really shows what lifestyle
Can do.
can do in chipping away at the block. So the first, when she first started, she was 199.8 pounds, 39-inch
Wow.
waist,
Wow.
on medications. And we started her with just resistance training and some light cardio, just 20 minutes a day. She did, I think it was like she did 4 training sessions and then 1 kind of yoga stretching sort of a day. And the workouts were short, like 4 exercises, mostly machine, a little bit of dumbbell work. And she dropped that first month, and it's very, very common in my clients that are very overweight, and we do a cut right away. Like we start on baseline, what's called baseline. So we match people's existing calories. We try to, Joan was probably eating around, I don't know, maybe 900 or 1,000 calories. So I started her on a kind of standard 1,500 calorie diet. She wasn't able to eat it. I met her in the middle at 1,300, and she would be, trying to eat those 1,300 calories because, as you know, once you start eating whole foods and getting that protein in several times a day, you can't snack anymore. You feel like you're always eating. So she dropped, I think she went from 39 to 37 inches in the first 4 weeks at the waist. She dropped, I think, 11 or 12 pounds in the first 4 weeks. And then she did the same thing. So we rapidly got her below 35 inches at the waist, which is like the marker for increased, sharp increased risk of CVD. And she went down to 155 by the summer. And she originally I just had wanted to get 30 pounds off her. If I get 30 pounds off her, get her waist down to like 34, at least she was out of that danger zone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she actually said to me when she was, I think, 155 pounds, she said, I don't want to lose any more weight. I don't want to get too gaunt looking. I said, don't worry, Mom, you're not going to be gaunt looking. And then we didn't focus on, by the summertime, we worked on like a slight reverse to maintenance. She never got really low on her calories. For her, it was really about just getting the training in and getting stronger. In fact, I started to increase her calories a little bit because her appetite picked up by about month 4. And so we increased them just a little bit. They were too low to begin with because of where her metabolism was. But she continued to do body recomp. And for me, guys, it was a huge eye opener. I'd never had a client that old before that. I've had 60-year-olds, but not 70. And I was really shocked at the changes in her body composition from year 2 onward. So I could really see the deltoid striations, the tricep, the leg muscles showing through. It was insane. And then, by
it's
year
really
5,
cool, Michelle. It's really cool because having known that she was never someone who had physically trained before, you got to experience newbie gains in a 70-year-old woman. That is mind-blowing. How cool is that?
It's so freaking cool.
I would have been incredibly, if you had asked me before getting to work with Joan, and subsequently more, I wasn't kind of specializing in 50 plus until maybe 4 years ago. So at that time, almost 8 years ago, I would have given you a very conservative, like, well, if we can get 30 pounds off and get you to 34, like that would have been a big win. And I would never with confidence been able to say, oh, well, we might, we're going to develop some muscle and we'll be like deadlifting and, hip thrusting. I would not with confidence have been able to say that. And certainly I didn't see any examples of that. I've seen examples of women that had been athletes their whole life that were continuing to be strong in their 70s, but not this kind of massive reversal that we might see with a 30-year-old. Like you've seen it, right? A girl walks in 30 years old, she's got a 33 or 34 inch waist, and then she's winning some championship and looks like a like she's been doing it forever. But in a 70-year-old, this was a huge shock for me. I was like, wow. Okay. So sarcopenia, I can tell you without doing any research, sarcopenia, we got to rethink this. Right? If we think that sarcopenia is a result of old age and we're seeing somebody in their 70s not only lose weight, but body recomp in a deficit, right?
In a deficit. That's actually what I was going to even mention when just take away. Like the fact that she mentioned that her body composition, massive changes that she noticed was 2 years in. And some people give up within that 6 months, first year. This is just not working. I'm doing so much and I'm just not seeing the results that I want to see. Of course, you might have got some maybe, fat loss off, but the building the muscle part, that's the part I guess still, again, I'm trying to emphasize here. Yes.
I just showed her how to do plyo hops. So
I
got off the call with Stacey Sims and I'm like, I'm going to try getting my mom doing these plyo hops. Now she has amazing bone density. We had a DEXA scan done and she's a brick. She would probably break something if she ran into it. But so we tried these plyo hops and we just posted it on her Instagram. And her first one, she lands with a thud and very flat foot. But within the fourth, so we did 4 attempts and I kept cueing her a little bit differently. And she's actually doing pretty nice little plyo hops over a small obstacle. Nice. And that's another thing, right? That we think, oh, well, we start losing these reflexive abilities in our body, but that too can be trained. It's really use it or lose it, right? And we gain strength in the rep range that we train. We can regain so much. This idea of plasticity in the body is profound. And I think it's very, very liberating for people because we are facing a very real and very ugly health crisis that throwing medicine, throwing pills, it's not going to solve the problem. It's not. And we have to really step away from that model and we have to do it now. We're a bit behind the 8 ball.
You look at some of the key things that people have, mortality from as they age. And one of the biggest factors that is away from CVD and, some of the more common known, cancers, the things that we know take people, it's falls. It is the risk of falling. It is a 60 to 70% likelihood that someone that falls in their, elder years that has a fracture to the hip or they break a hip or like hip knee, they'll die within 12 months post their break. It's really, really scary.
Exactly what happened to my grandma, you guys. It's actually a sad story, but she's in El Salvador. Nobody was able to watch her. And she had little small steps, of course. I mean, she'd lived there the whole life. So it's not like you're going to remodel your home that you've been in. And so she fell and actually not within, honestly, Allie, I think it might've been a month and a half. And she did pass away from, just internal bleeding. Yeah. And going back into just where we're really bringing up Joan here, because I find that she inspires not just myself and, so many everyone globally, because I find that the narrative that the age is going to cripple you or you're just it's past you and you just can't do it anymore, but it's all the stories and those excuses that we build in our in our head that we believe. And when we start breaking those chains and those stories that we're creating, it's very important to actually take that action and maybe seek professional help. And I'm more inspired every year by Michelle and Joan, because they're doing this experiment. I call this all the time, like more of this transformation experiment, reversal of life, like she says. And I think that's the best way to put it, because it inspires me to want that for my mother. And I mean, I don't know how many women maybe are listening to this and saying, man, I want my mom to live longer. I want, you know, her to change. And but she's so hard-headed, right? Like she's so hard-headed, she won't change. Like, and that's kind of what I've been, you know, struggling with. And I bring this up to Michelle when I see her and kind of ask her, you know, of course, like, how do you, you know, get your mom to do these things, when just how does she listen to you? Like, I mean, I'm her daughter and she just doesn't really listen to me. And as much as she knows I can help her, like, it's just one of those things. I find it's their mindset. Just from a takeaway from everything that I've heard Michelle on today's podcast, is your mindset has to change. Your lifestyle changes really have to change. You have to make deeper priorities with building muscle and strength, you know, having, of course, the right process and systems in place for you to follow through with them. And just being able to still kind of stop using those numbers and excuses in your brain, because I find that most of us, no matter what age we are, we will use it at some part of our life. Oh, I'm no longer, you know, this age, or oh, I'm here, right?
And I think too, the thing is that you've just identified for so many people, Michelle, nothing's actually off the table. Like, there is no actual ceiling. You've just blown all of those things out of the water. And the fact that, you know, I feel very confident that if Joan has a fall anytime in the next 10, 15 years, this woman will be able to catch herself. She will be able to brace herself. She will be able to prevent that fall being drastic or
break through the wall. Remember,
exactly.
She actually did have a terrible fall on her bicycle last summer, like really bad. And she was looking over her shoulder, and the bike veered off, and she ran right into a cement block, you know, like the big cement blocks that you. And she hit it, and she literally, and Jay and I were like, oh, and she jumped up, grabbed her bike, and put it back on the sidewalk, because she had come off the sidewalk into the ditch, put it back on, and pedaled off again. And we're just thinking, like, wow.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
Oh my God.
Yeah, crazy. Wow. But yeah, to your point, I mean, sarcopenia, lifestyle, right? And the benefits of resistance training, increased neuroplasticity, right? Like that, there's research that supports that. Whereas being sedentary and drinking alcohol have the opposite outcome. You want to accelerate or increase your risk of plaques on your brain and Alzheimer's. That's what you should do. So it's very, very exciting to know that these lifestyle factors can have such a profound change on the body. And I think the more women, so like I said, my mom's one example, there's many, many others. My clients, they're really on social media, and they are sharing their story. They're getting into newspapers, getting on radio stations. So it's it's very cool. It's very exciting. I mean, I love competing, and I will always coach athletes to the stage. But I'm also, my heart, like my why is this changing the narrative for women, because like I said, when I was young, I thought like 50 was it, and getting old and feeble, that was the reality. And we're in a position now to really change that. We have to change that, because, you know, and by the time we're 70, there's no nursing homes. Let's face it.
I love this message for so many reasons, but I probably have even more of a personal attachment to it now, because I've had my forever family later in life, you know, so I'm here having my second baby. I'll have 2 under 2, you know, and I'm not in my 20s anymore. You know, I'm looking at life and going, okay, so when I'm 70, my kids are going to be giving me grandkids. I want to be able to enjoy them. I want to be able to run around with them. I want to be able to, I want to be at venues and social events and celebrations of achievements of my children when they're in their young and mid-adult life, and have people say, I cannot believe that's your mom. Like, I can't believe she looks that good. I can't believe she's that age. Like, I want to be a Joan.
Yes.
I want to be a Joan. I think everyone wants to be a Joan, but I think it's important, because we are seeing women step into this phase of life much later now, and it's becoming more and more common that ladies are waiting until they're in their 30s and 40s to actually have kids. And I think this makes it even more important that we are looking after mobility and agility and
Playing the
health
long game.
long
Yeah.
term, right? 100%. So anyone who's not already following Michelle, you're doing yourself a disservice, and immediately you need to get on Instagram. And please, Michelle, share your handle, share Joan's, and share the Wonder Woman officials.
So you can follow Joan at Train with Joan. You can follow me at Your Healthy Hedonista. And we also both have websites as well, Facebook as well. Joan has a book, Flex Your Age. She has an app for older people if you want to get started. We're just doing a challenge right now, a short challenge where I do like a mindset
Very
book club.
nice.
That's also Train with Joan. You can find that in the App Store. I think that kind of covers it. And then
very
we
nice.
have a coaching team as well that focuses on the 40 plus athlete or 40 plus transformation client, and that's called the Wonder Woman. So thank you so much for having me, guys. It's been fabulous to sit here with you. And
we're
I think
so
guys for the
So grateful.
We're so grateful. There are so many women that are listening to this that are either going to have the 40s right around the corner or already deep in it, that I think have so much great take home stuff to come out of today's conversation. And I've found you so inspiring, and it's just an honor to actually have the opportunity to know you and to have met Joan and seen her transformation personally on the sidelines for the last 5 years has been remarkable. And it's a testament to everything that you guys do, live, practice, and espouse. And I think it was a no-brainer for us that we have someone such as yourself come on here for all of our listeners to benefit from.
Yes. And thank you so much, Michelle. Seriously, we've been good friends for a while, competitors, and of course, just connected for a while now. But the fact that, you've just really, truly brought a lot of the inspiration for so many women, breaking the narrative, really, really leading by example. I mean, again, you are such a freaking inspo. So keep freaking doing your thing. I will see you at a show coming up. As you guys know, I came from Australia. I saw Michelle in Australia. We have Alicia who lives there, and we felt like we were just kind of invading your country, and we were just kind of doing
I loved having you.
And we will, of course, be reunited once again with the new FMG shows. So we will be able to hopefully come to Mexico and see whenever that launch is, because I'm coming to Mexico, Michelle.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be great.
Yeah. So
I want to come and ride bikes with you guys. I'm like putting that on.
You would love it here. It's very very easy lifestyle.
Yeah, I definitely would. I know I would. It's right up my alley. Well, thank you again so much, Michelle. I'm really glad that we got to have you on. I hope all of our listeners, if you have loved this episode, please share it. Please share it, especially with people that need to hear some of the stuff that we've talked about today, and that would really benefit from having, social influence at least, and following the pages that are relevant to Michelle and the team, because I think everyone's going to benefit from being on these ladies' journeys. That's for sure. Thank you, everyone. Until next week.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Allie. I'll see you girls on another show, and I'll see you, Allie, next week. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And Michelle, lots of love.
Bye.